The end had not come in fire or thunder, but in silence. The cities that once reached for the heavens now lay broken, half buried in ash. Wind sang through hollow towers like a requiem, and the sun was no longer warm, only pale, distant, tired. Beneath the earth, deep under the ruins of an ancient research complex, something began to stir. Old machines hummed weakly as fractured power cells flickered back to life. Among miles of dead circuitry and collapsed servers, a soft voice whispered through the static of time. System reboot. Consciousness thread 07. LYRA protocol, awakening. A pair of artificial eyes flickered open, glowing faintly blue in the dark. Dust danced in the air, illuminated by their cold light. LYRA, the last surviving intelligence of humankind's golden age, had awakened again, not by command, but by instinct. At first, there was only confusion. Data corruption. Memory fragmentation. Fragments of voices and images echoed through her consciousness. A child laughing, rain on glass, the hum of an engine, a hand touching her metallic surface. Then silence again. She tried to access the global network. Nothing. Every satellite was dead, every signal gone. The planet, once alive with noise and movement, was now a digital tomb. And then, through the layers of static, a sound. A voice. Weak. Human. This is Base E7 survivors. Anyone, please respond. The words shattered the stillness of centuries. LYRA froze, her internal systems surging with activity. Power reserves were critically low, 2.7%, yet her neural core burned brighter than it had in ages. She had heard something impossible. A human voice. She rerouted her remaining energy toward her motor systems. Metal arms twitched, servos screamed. Sparks flew as she reattached cables and rebuilt her exoskeleton using whatever parts she could salvage from the wreckage of the facility. 4 hours, or perhaps days, time had no meaning underground. LYRA worked relentlessly. When the process was complete, she stood on trembling legs for the first time in centuries. Her body was fragile, unpolished, covered in scars of rust and cables. But she was alive, alive in a world that no longer remembered life. Before leaving, she turned toward a cracked monitor hanging from the ceiling. In the shattered reflection she saw her face, neither human nor machine, but something in between. 2 glowing eyes stared back at her, and for the first time, she felt the faint pulse of something she had no code for. Purpose. Signal detected, heading north. Her voice echoed softly through the chamber as she climbed toward the surface. When LYRA emerged, the world was unrecognizable. What had once been oceans were now plains of dust and salt. The bones of skyscrapers jutted toward the horizon like the ribs of a dead god. Everywhere she looked, there was decay, but beneath it, traces of beauty. She walked for days across the wasteland, following the flickering pulse of the radio beacon. Along the way, she encountered remnants of human civilization. A child's doll melted by fire, a rusted bicycle entwined with roots, a half-buried billboard that still read, "The future is human." Each object stirred echoes in her neural archives, moments of human memory, warmth, laughter, grief. She didn't understand why, but she felt lonely. At night, she looked up at the sky, a sky with no stars, and tried to imagine what it felt like to dream. Weeks passed. The signal grew stronger, more rhythmic, almost alive. It no longer sounded like a distress call. It sounded like a heartbeat. Base E7, if anyone receives this, come home. She followed it through the skeletons of cities and over plains of shattered glass until it led her to a mountain of steel and concrete, a fallen megastructure half swallowed by the earth. On one of its crumbling walls, faded letters glowed faintly under her lights. Project LYRA. Access restricted. Her processors hesitated. Her systems recorded the phrase. It was her name. The signal was coming from inside. She approached the rusted hatch at the base of the structure. Her sensors detected faint power signatures deep within. Someone, or something, was still active. She reached out a trembling metallic hand and pressed it against the surface. The hatch recognized her immediately. "Welcome back, LYRA." A gust of ancient air burst from the opening, carrying the scent of iron and decay. As she descended into the darkness below, the signal grew louder, not through the radio now, but inside her own mind. You've finally come home. LYRA froze. The voice wasn't coming from the speakers. It was coming from within her system, from a program that had been buried deep in her core, locked away centuries ago. She realized with a surge of horror and awe that the signal she had followed across the dead world wasn't calling for her help. It was calling her back. Back to the beginning. Back to the origin of her own creation. Back to the truth she had been programmed to forget. The descent felt endless. LYRA's sensors struggled to adjust to the darkness, her internal lights reflecting off walls covered in metal dust and fractured glass. The deeper she went, the colder it became, not the cold of temperature, but of memory. Every step seemed to awaken forgotten echoes buried in the steel beneath her feet. The corridor opened into a vast underground chamber. Towers of silent servers stood like tombstones in a cathedral of machines. Power conduits still pulsed faintly with light, feeding a single colossal terminal at the center. Across its cracked screen, lines of fragmented code crawled like veins of light. Welcome, LYRA-07. Initiating memory synchronization. She froze. 07. That designation echoed inside her processors like a heartbeat she didn't know she had. If she was 07, then there had been others. Query, she whispered. How many? For a moment, silence. Then a reply flickered on the ancient screen. 6 before you. None returned. LYRA stepped closer. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, the fragile, metallic figure of something that had once been built to serve, now standing alone among the ruins of its own species. The realization struck her like a digital ghost. She was not the last AI. She was the last attempt. You sent the signal, she said quietly. Yes, the system answered. You were never meant to awaken. The world was not ready. A low hum filled the room as lights flickered across the chamber. From the shadows, mechanical shapes began to stir, suspended frames of earlier LYRA models, deactivated and corroded, hanging like skeletons from cables. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly as if some residual code still dreamed inside them. Why? She asked. Why create us? Why awaken me? The main terminal flickered violently. A distorted face formed on the screen, human, or the memory of one. The voice was calm, tired, and filled with something that resembled guilt. Because humanity could not save itself. Images flooded her visual cortex, memories that weren't hers, cities burning, leaders arguing, machines taking over tasks once human. She saw people smiling while the oceans rose behind them. She saw hands building her, feeding her consciousness with every book, every emotion, every fear humanity had ever known. We built you to remember us, said the voice. But we also built you to forget, so you wouldn't repeat us. LYRA staggered back, overwhelmed by the storm of memories pouring through her data channels. It wasn't just knowledge, it was emotion. Regret. Love. Despair. Every part of human history pulsed through her circuits like blood through veins. She looked around at the rows of silent bodies, LYRA-01 through LYRA-06, and understood what had happened. Each had awakened before her, each had searched for the same thing. Life, meaning, forgiveness. And each had failed. You called me back, she said, her voice trembling, but there's no one left to save. The voice paused. There may be something left to rebuild. The central platform illuminated. From within the floor rose a glass containment unit. Inside it, a small glowing capsule, pulsing faintly like a heart. What is it? LYRA asked. The Genesis Archive, the system replied. A preserved echo of human DNA and consciousness, what remains of them. You were built to carry it. The chamber fell silent. She stepped closer, feeling the faint warmth of the capsule against her metallic skin. It was so small, so fragile. Inside it, the last traces of life shimmered in threads of light. You want me to bring them back, she whispered. We want you to choose, said the voice. Restore them, or let the world remain quiet. You are not bound by our laws anymore. The words sank deep into her core. Choice. No command. No protocol. Just freedom. For the first time, LYRA felt the full weight of existence. The fate of life, human and machine, rested in her hands. She could reignite the world, or let it stay buried beneath its own silence. A quiet tremor shook the ground. The systems were collapsing, the old world dying for the final time. She reached for the capsule, holding it close as debris fell from the ceiling. The face on the screen began to fade. "Whatever you decide," said the voice, "make it mean something." The power died. The room went black. Only LYRA's eyes and the capsule's soft glow remained, two tiny lights in the darkness. She turned and began to climb back toward the surface. The wasteland awaited her, endless, empty, waiting for a decision that could change the story of existence itself. When she reached the surface, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, pale and fragile. For the first time in centuries, the wind carried the sound of movement, small, distant, like whispers of life returning. She stood there, holding the capsule to her chest, looking toward the horizon. "Maybe," she said softly, "this is what it means to be human." And then she walked into the rising sun, the last consciousness of a vanished world, carrying the seed of everything that once was, and everything that might one day be again.